Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Check. You hear me?
And we got live.
We got live.
We got live. Yo, what is up, you guys? Thanks for joining in for another Cup of Joe with Jag. My name is Jag. I have my cup of Joe. It's on the ground over there. Usually, you don't really see me drinking the cup of Joe during the show, but I promise you, it is here. He can testify to this one. He's got his cup of Joe right there, talking about that liquid death. That's
right.
That was from actually Jeff from the last episode with talking about Red Coat from Ghost Machine. Jeff Johns, check that out as well. But thanks for joining into the show. We have a special guest here today. Please welcome Evan Pollock. Thank you for joining me on the show, my man. I appreciate you.
Yeah, of course, man. Yeah,
absolutely. Sure. Well, dude, I just wanted to bring you onto the show, man, and just talk about a couple of awesome things that you have been posting. This man is an incredible photographer, incredible cinematography. I mean, 8K movie style stuff. This is movie style. This isn't just like your normal YouTube video like me. This is like legit IMAX kind of Chris Nolan kind of stuff, man. I'm telling you, top notch.
Yeah, don't be comparing me to Chris Nolan. That man is a genius, and he shoots on crazy film IMAX cameras. My little camera does not even compare to a IMAX camera that they've got going.
That is true. That's true. Well, dude, I just wanted to come on here and ask you, how did you get into cinematography? What introduced you to the world of cinematography?
Yeah, well, I've always been invested and interested in visual storytelling. It's always been kind of part of my makeup. Part of my family has been, my whole entire family history has been in the arts. My father was a musician. And honestly, like, that's where I started getting into music as a storyteller. Mm-hmm. And for the longest time, honestly, I thought I was going to be doing music production. But I was also just a huge movie buff, movie fan. And my parents would always say, like, when I was, as early as like 6 or 7, they were saying, like, you pick out mistakes. I would be able to pick out mistakes in movies of like, oh, they did that differently. Oh, his hair's different. Oh, he has a different thing on. They're like, dude, you're going to be in movie stuff some point. But I, it was always just kind of like, oh, I just like movies. But then as time went on, I was interested in music production, obviously, and, was vocally trained by my father because he was a big musician, and all of our my siblings and all of our family played piano, guitar. My brother played drums, and so that was always kind of part of our early fabric of being in the arts.
Yeah.
And so then I went through performance theater thinking like, okay, well, I will start, getting into this whole artist game, and start pursuing music as a career. And I started several bands growing up as a teenager, had been a part of a few musical bands, both on worship team and outside of worship. So I was part of a couple of singer-songwriter duos early on, one called Drastic Heights, and then the next one was called Indigo. And we loved it. We were performing all across town. My brother-in-law, my sister, now married, he was a local legend of the rock star, genre of a band called Happy Endings back in Springfield, Missouri. And he actually ended up getting signed through for a short period of time. But through all that, music has been basically our fabric that's knit us together. And so I was thinking, okay, maybe music production. Then long story short, as I was going through it and kind of realizing how up and down an artist's life is in, being able to get jobs, you're only really dependent upon your physical performance as an artist, and it is more of a luck of the draw kind of thing. So as time went on, I started picking up a video camera, and in my early high school years started shooting things just haphazardly. My brother was a skater as well, so I would film him doing skating things, and my dad would bring home from his work this giant VHS recorder. So those things are like, it records straight to a VHS.
Massive.
So these things are huge. It's shoulder camera worthy. But we would make goofy skate videos, and I was not a good skater, but I also realized that I liked, trying to be part of that and participating in that demographic and that community. But I realized I was not a good skater, so I'm like, well, I'll just film them. And so I filmed a few of my skate friends, filmed my brother, and then just really fell in love with just picking up a camera, doing little short films with my friends. Again, never really putting my finger on, I want to do this as a living. And then probably my later half of my high school experience, I really realized that film was an important part of my storytelling, I guess, journey. Lord of the Rings, when it came out, I was 11 at the time, was basically that movie that The Fellowship of the Ring, basically that movie that brought me into, I want to do this. So I thought I was going to be an actor. I'm like, I want to be a part of these big cinematic experiences where you're growing as a family to create this really big passion project. Because, at the time, Lord of the Rings was basically the most well-funded indie project, because New Zealand was not a big hub for movies. But I watched all the behind the scenes, fell in love with the process of film, and then decided I would like to be an actor. And so that's why I went into performance theater, musical, using my backing as in music to be able to fuel my ambition into theater and acting. And so I was in a lot of musicals all growing up, and so I was a theater kid, essentially. And so through that, though, that's when it kind of come back to, I realized that an artist's life is so up and down, hot and heavy, and then nothing at all. And so I wanted to get into the behind the scenes of making movies or making music. And so I was like, maybe music production or maybe movie production. And so I ended up sticking with movie production because I felt like there was a more accessible career there. And through that, I went to college, focus at Missouri State University, focusing on the film arts, and applied for this electronic arts, like the elite video art studies, because there's the normal base study, and then there's, if you want to, after your first 2 years, you can apply for this elite program that only a few students get into every year. And so at the end of that project, you get a year to basically make your passion project. And so I applied, I got in, and produced a musical comedy. So relying on my musical roots to basically kind of fuel that musical comedy writing, and then made a 25 minute short film called At the Top of My Lungs. And it was great. It was a fantastic experience, very big learning experience, what it means to actually be a director, because there were a lot of things that I thought I should be a part of that I really shouldn't have been a part of, or there were things I wasn't doing that I should have been doing. So it was very much a big learning curve coming into that space. But in the end, I had a great crew of other students that came along and helped me really craft a really fun musical comedy experience. And so we had the film, it went great, produced it, put it out, and everyone involved loved it. And the Electronic Arts Committee loved it, and so I was happy with that. And so then I was able to go on and help another individual with his senior project as a line producer, and that was really fun, again, being behind the scenes. But right in college, I started filming my own things. And since I was a part of the media like lab, I would be able to rent out all these big cameras and then be able to go shoot my own things and be able to use some of those things for my film classes, and then be able to use them as my own personal projects. And so I developed my skills of testing out a lot of different cameras, a lot of different lenses, a lot of different equipment. And I quickly realized that I could make money doing this for a job in the wedding space. And so I started doing wedding films, and as a way just to make money to fuel my passion, be able to get more equipment. And it's a great way to kind of enter into the filmmaking industry as a career, rather than just like an art form of I'm going to make all these indie films and they're going to be so story driven. It's like, okay, if you're going to make there are a lot of indie films out there, a lot of people that are doing this as more of a hobby or, as a passion, but they are operating as an artist. I'm like, I don't want to just operate as an artist. I want to operate as a business owner, but also be able to fuel my artistic ambitions. So I started getting into weddings to be able to fuel that, to help me build an understanding of business and to be able to figure out how to build a business and learn a craft while making money at it. So I had a friend that was a wedding planner that she said, all right, you can do a few of these weddings that have not had filmmakers on them, videographers, because this is back in 2012. And I had zero experience in weddings, and she said, okay, well, these people that are these couples that I'm, planning their wedding, they don't have a filmmaker, so why don't you come on and you can experience that, and I can show you the ropes, and you can then produce something for them for free, and you get a learning experience, you get to know how this game works, and then you also get to benefit of meeting some people within the wedding industry. So, but before that, before I even graduated, I actually, being so in love with Lord of the Rings and that whole entire film experience, I knew that The Hobbit was going to be coming out. So I took a year off of college to go move to New Zealand for a year.
Oh, wow.
And try my hand at getting on the set of The Hobbit. And so through that experience, I also learned a lot about what you do not do and what you do in the film industry.
Yeah.
And I was 19 at the time, so my timing was a little bit off because this was in 2010. And then the film kept on getting some delays while I was there, even though it was set to start filming in 2010. I think they started filming in the mid-half of 2011, right when I was about to leave. So my timing wasn't great, but I did get to be on the set as a costume assistant for a day. So I'm like, that's
awesome.
That works. And so
you got to meet a lot of the cast and everything at the time?
I only met Ian McKellen. And so who plays Gandalf. And so I got to meet him, get his signature on my copy of The Hobbit.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool.
Sick.
I've got a photo somewhere in my phone of him and I, just a photo of he and I together, which was great. But that experience aside, I didn't get to meet any of the cast because of how closed door it was, and how very, very much I think Warner Brothers had come on to fuel the rest of the production, so they really kept a closed lip and closed doors to a lot of stuff. So it was a very, very secretive, and so I didn't really understand a lot of the filming processes at that time. So anyway, come back, I had learned basically a huge life experience of living on my own as a 19-year-old to 20-year-old, never been away from home before. So that was a very, very life-changing experience, and something I would recommend to anybody who's graduating high school and going to college. Take a leap year, a gap year, not a leap year, a gap year, and go travel, experience the world, because it is the best time for you to learn more about yourself and to learn more about the world around you, because the world around you is way bigger than where you grew up. So if you just go straight from high school into college, you don't really gather that life experience and find more about yourself, I feel like. And it's a great opportunity for people to understand more about their own interests in the world, because people just go to college because that's what you do.
Yeah, that's the typical, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
They push it too, like in
Yeah.
high schools and stuff. Like, I remember back in like sophomore, junior year, they were like, "So what do you want to do? So when are you going to college? Where are you going to college? What are you
Yeah.
going to do? What's going to happen?" And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I am 16 years old.
Exactly. You're supposed to have it all figured out. I'm like, I'm trying to figure out my emotions right now.
I'm 28 years old, and I'm still like, kind of, maybe, sort of. I'm like at a 70%, 75%. But with with my parents and everything, we had a very good foundation started for me. Going on from high school to college, and all that. But just mentally, for kids going from high school to college, it's scary.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of high school kids are like, I could take on the world. I can do whatever I want. I can go and just, but on the inside, they're like, I'm terrified. You know what I mean? But
as you should be, because it is a big jump. I mean, I guess going from high school to college isn't that big of a jump, but at the same time, like, if you really want to know, college is for careers.
Mm.
If you are confident in your career moving forward and know exactly what you want to do, yeah, sure, do it.
Mm.
And if that's your life trajectory, but I recommend, even if you think you know what you want to do, take a gap year, explore the world. It's the best time to do it, because you're going to learn more about yourself and have either concrete what you want to do in life, or it's going to completely shift because you experience so much other culture and other ways the world works, because everyone's kind of guessing and like, oh yeah, this is the way it works. And, oh yeah, this is the way it works. And it's like, no, okay. Your isolated community in the space that you've been is going to tell you one thing, but you move, if you go a few hundred miles or a few thousand miles away, they're going to completely do a different way of life. And you may actually realize that you like that way of life more. So take a gap year, take some time. It'll grow you up in the most beneficial way possible. It's scary. It's extremely scary, but it is extremely beneficial. And I had some of the best life experiences and growing up to do in that space, because it did confirm that I wanted to pursue film and arts, but it also confirmed, really solidified my faith in God, and it didn't make my faith my parents' faith, that's handed down, as my parents were conservative Christians. It made it to where it's like, oh no, this is real, because I then was able to apply what I had learned throughout the years into real life scenarios, rather than kind of like, set up scenarios where you kind of always had that support. So no, I was able to take that and really apply it to finding a job, finding a church, finding an apartment, finding all these different things about my life, through my reliance upon God in that space. And then God became real and palpable, rather than just book knowledge, And so, and so that was very much a growing up experience for me. But all right, and then jumping back into college, finished the film, then was set up to actually go and work on a few productions down in Atlanta, Georgia, because that's a hotbed for a lot of productions. I was going to be a cinematographer's assistant or something like that, a PA on The Walking Dead. But so that was kind of set up for me. But having done a few during college, having done a few production assistant jobs for productions, larger productions, I kind of got a really harsh look into what that space is. And a lot of these guys are working, not 9 to 5s. They're working long hours. And then they're working 6 days a week for 12 hours a day. And then on top of that, if you wanted to get ahead in a lot of these spaces to be able to then move the needle a bit, you had to go to a lot of seedy places to then network with these people. And some of these guys wanted to go get, go to the bar and get drunk after a long day's work, or go to a strip club, and then, and that's where they would network, that's where they would hang out. And I'm like, that is not my scene. That is not how I want to operate. And if I know that, and I am already working really long hours and doing so much on that end, I just want to go to bed, at the end of the day. And so I decided, you know what, I'm not going to take that path of, and especially because I was dating my now wife, and I realized and she's not in the industry. And so she was a really important part of my life. I'm like, if I want to keep this girl in my life, I have to make some hard choices of, do I want to pursue this lifestyle that is going to take some really hard, physical tolls and emotional tolls on me to get into this industry, and potentially, put in situations where it's going to compromise my morals and ethics, and I wasn't really willing to do that. So I decided I didn't want to take the 10-year journey to get to a certain place and then hate that 10-year journey. I'd rather take a 30-year journey doing my own thing and then eventually get to that same place, but enjoy the journey along the way and be able to kind of set my own pace and be able to make my own rules.
Yeah.
So I know that I could have benefited a lot from being on set on these larger productions in a big sense. I could have, elevated my production levels, but I feel like at the time it just wasn't for me. And it wasn't, I wasn't going to be set up properly to be able to not only have a social life, but also have my loving wife that I have now. And so I knew that would be sacrificed. This relationship would be sacrificed if I decided to do that. Not because of anything she put on me, because she was extremely supportive of all of my artistic endeavors. But I also knew at the time what it would take. Mm-hmm. So I decided to do my own thing. I pursued weddings pretty hardcore, and got to a really good space in that genre of being a wedding filmmaker, and kind of got to a point where to a crossroads where I was entertaining some of the commercial, independent music videos, commercial docs, short docs, narrative commercials, all this other stuff on the side, but I didn't have a lot of time because the wedding stuff was taking off. And so back in, I think it was 2016, I was given the opportunity to create this cinematic short documentary on the fishing industry up in Washington, because my wife and I moved to Washington after I graduated and we got married. We moved up to Washington State, to Bellingham. And so I was in a completely different culture and than Missouri. And so then I took that opportunity to then I was presented with that opportunity to try something different than my weddings. But what weddings did for me was be able to find great light in a pinch, be able to tell a compelling, heartfelt story, and be able to kind of create this formula of a story, because weddings are pretty predictable. You've got the getting ready, you have the setup of the venues, you have the guests, you have all of these interactions. So you have to be really, really aware of your surroundings. And so that was great training for me to be able to then take over into more of the commercials, the short docs, and the narrative space, because I could tell an emotional story, because I knew where to hit those beats and be able to find great looking areas in not so great looking environments, and be able to find that good light, and being able to basically taking all of my knowledge from the wedding industry and then apply it into the commercial space. And so 2016 was that basically fork in the road where I got that opportunity to create this cinematic short doc on the fishing industry up in Bellingham, and it's called The Servants of the Salish Sea. So I created that one. It was extremely successful, and it also lit a fire in my heart of like, okay, I think this is the time for me to transition into not wedding filmmaking, because I need to go fully commercial and short doc and music video, because I realized at that time, like, I didn't want to be in my 50s and 60s shooting weddings, because it eats up your weekends. It's physically taxing.
The busyness of it too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, wedding planners and all that, and all of the camera people. I see them running around like a chicken with their head cut off. I mean, it's just grueling sometimes. It's fun, like you were
Yeah.
saying. It's totally fun.
Yeah,
So,
because well, you eat your weekends away.
yeah,
You're booked basically, from May till August, September, no, October really. So all those weekends are basically burned. So you don't really have the opportunity, and then you have to work on these weddings during the week. And
Yeah.
so it's like, okay, I film it and then I edit it and then I have to put it out during certain times. And so it kind of isolated me into not having my weekends, and it also ate my summers away. And it's not I ever got burned out on the wedding industry. I just knew it was a time to close that chapter before I got burned out on it, because
Yeah.
I still have a great wedding filmmaking experience. And so, if I continued to pursue that, it would be highly monetarily profitable. It would be I would be really well off in that space and be able to, continue to travel and everything like I'm doing right now. But it wouldn't be artistically fulfilling.
Yeah.
Because you kind of lock yourself into certain genre spaces of like, this is the same story over and over and over again. And though you can get creative with that space, I want to be able to have artistic control over the environments and want to be able to, hey, can we do that take again? Hey, can we do that? But it's an event. You don't have the luxury of doing multiple takes of certain things, or you don't have the luxury of being the director and control over your environment. You are at the whims of what has been created for you or created for the couple. And you're like, all right, I got to find a way to make this my own while also providing for the client. So, I really just decided to step back from that and then go into commercial pretty hard, because I wanted more artistic control. I wanted to be able to tell stories. I wanted to be able to write. And so I hit the commercial space pretty hard. And then, it was a great experience. I think, again, it was great training grounds for where I was going. And I think that any filmmaker worth their salt should do weddings for a little bit, because it is going to teach you so much about the industry. The filming industry. It's going to teach you about your ability to problem solve within short amounts of time. And so overall, it was a great learning experience, and it was a great foundation building to be able to then pursue the commercial side. So then I got into the commercial side, started pursuing more of that, and was given a couple opportunities to create commercials for businesses and create narratives within those commercials, because commercials can be pretty cold if it's just like corporate videos, pans of spaces, pans of this, pans of with a voiceover talking about how cool we are as a company and everything. And it can get pretty boring.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's what companies want. They're like, we just need something that talks about us. So I'm like, over time, I realized that companies need to not talk about themselves. They need to talk about their customers and how the customers, and create a customer scenario in which the company can then come alongside that customer. So that way people can visualize, okay, this is me in this space. I need to be able to know how I'm going to accomplish my goal, and the company should be the guide of then helping that person accomplish their own goal. So it's not about the company, it's about the person. Or the customer. So that was the takeoff of me going into narrative commercial work. And so I was kind of all over the place as far as, because commercials, you can do. I did a commercial for a dentist company. I did a commercial for a a business card company. I did commercials for the Servants of the Sailor Sea. I did commercials for FCA. So my genre of filmmaking was in commercial, but it wasn't honed into a certain niche within the commercial space. So so that was, but I knew there are certain genres within that space that I wanted to pursue. So like for a while I got into the beverage space, and I was filming craft beer, because our town Bellingham is a huge mecca for craft beer. And so I started working on a feature-length documentary about the craft beer industry, very similar to like Chef's Table-esque, but like Chef's Table meets craft beer. And so that one is actually still in the works, because it's gone through several rigmaroles of highs and lows and different iterations and yeah, so that one kind of it's still in the works, needless to say. So that one I'm hoping to get done this year.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome. And then, so with that cinematography going into commercialized and to the short film kind of way, did that kind of plug you into what you do now in filming the cars and filming for clients who want their cars shot, and not just cars, but you do like the watches.
Yeah,
you do
yeah.
those watches and stuff. So did that kind of like avenue you into that kind of like area, or
I would say that it gave me an opportunity. So all through 2019, up till 2020, basically I was kind of had this certain set trajectory of like, here's where I want to go, here's where I think I want to go. I think so. During 2020, obviously everything hit and all of my normal income for my commercial clients went away. Obviously everyone was in a bit of a tizzy of like, what do we do now? How do we keep on operating our business? How do we do this? And so I had to adapt. And I also had the opportunity to like, okay, what do I really want to do? Instead of pursuing all these things that have been set up, are they really what I want to do? Or are they just like, this is just the way your business has grown. So just keep it going because it's keeping the lights on.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, well, now this has given me space, mental space to be able to pursue some things that are a little more consistent. And so I not only consistent, but also more artistically fulfilling. So I ventured into doing some spec projects. Now, spec projects are free projects you kind of self-produce it, but it gives you an opportunity to explore different genres that you want to pursue. Say if you want to do a motorcycle commercial for a motorcycle brand, you should have stuff in your past that you've shot. Like, I've shot motorcycles, I know what I'm doing, let me do what I'm doing. Because a lot of companies, they don't really want you to come in and experiment. They want you to
do what they want to do, and how they want it to be run. And you can have that creativity of like, you could do these, but like, this is the outline.
Well, they just want confidence in you. They want confidence that you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So you have to have a reel or a production reel or some projects that reflect that reflect that you know what you're doing in this space, in this genre. So I was like, all right, I would really like to get into something a little more fast moving. So let's produce a motorcycle commercial. So there was a company called Pack Animal that we got to, that was basically a motorcycle bag and backpack company. They were putting out this competition to say, hey, we'll send you a bag if you can make us a cool commercial, who the winner gets $1,000 or whatever. So I'm like, perfect, that sounds great. Well, let's try that. Let's also kind of lump this into like, we'll make it a motorcycle commercial, we'll make it a backpack commercial, and we'll make it like a whiskey commercial. And so I got together several of my friends, filmmaker friends in the space, and they said, yep, let's do it. So we took a weekend, kind of like 24 hours really to shoot it. But we had ideas of what we wanted the commercial to be about, and we started writing and testing and a bunch of car rigs that we had gotten our hands on from some friend filmmakers, and produced this really cool short film about a minute long about this individual who was in the midst of 2020 being told to stay home, shelter your doors, lock yourself inside. And it's like,
you're gonna die if you go out there.
Exactly. And so we were all feeling pent up, and so we're like, let's make a commercial about this person who's feeling so pent up and told to stay inside that he needs just to get out and adventure. Yeah. And so we made that commercial about him going out and saying, it's like, for those told, going out and adventure and travel up the mountain, and then going on a big hike, and then putting a little fire out this beautiful mountainside. And we shot all that within a day, and it was unreal. We kind of started later in the day, so it was like 5 o'clock, and then we shot into the following days, 5 p.m. to 5 p.m. basically. Yeah. So stayed on the mountain, got up super early to go shoot this thing. we shot sunrise for sunset, so we kind of did everything in reverse. So we started off with the end shot of him doing it at sunset, but it was actually sunrise. And so then we filmed everything backwards. And so we're like, all right, now let's film him building the fire. All right, now let's film him hiking to that spot where he'd be building the fire. So, it looks like progressively, it looks like the sun's going down where it's actually coming up. So, yeah, it was fun because you got to play with the rules about, with what you're given. So we shot that. We won. So we got we won the competition. So that was really exciting.
Yeah.
And then that project itself, we filmed a whole behind the scenes of how we made it, how it all came together, and then put that out on YouTube, and that went really well. And then from that experience, from that project, it kind of lit the fire to do a couple more things that were in that spec space. Like, so I started shooting a couple spec music videos, and then my buddy, another filmmaker buddy of mine, came and said, hey, I've got this car, this really cool car that I built, this 944 Porsche. Do you want to go film it? And said, oh yeah, for sure. Let's take a few hours. We'll go into the woods. We'll film it. And that's where it kind of lit the fire for automotive side. And so, I had done some motorcycle stuff and I wanted to do more motorcycle stuff, but this opportunity that this guy presented to me, I was like, I can't say no. This car is really cool. Why not? It was just the luck of the draw that it turned out being rainy and moody and hazy, and it was the perfect backdrop for everything.
I think, did you post that on your Instagram? Was it the one where you're in the woods and he's kind of sitting on the car?
Yeah.
Is it that one?
Yeah, with the red car.
That one was so cool. I freaking love that one.
Yeah.
And it was great because, not to cut you off or anything.
No, you're fine.
But it was really cool how you explained in one of your other videos that was a kind of like a promo to your filmography and everything you and a gentleman had, and I apologize. I apologize to you. What was that gentleman's name again?
Nick Hanlon. Yeah,
you're freaking awesome. You're cool. And the your whole team is incredible, awesome, amazing people. And there was a trilogy that you did.
Yeah, so that was the first one that we did on a whim, and we posted it on social media, and it went viral. And and then repost of that had become even more viral, and so that got us linked into another individual who is a Porsche enthusiast, also Porsche influencer, content creator. He had another Porsche 911, a 996 with a rooftop tent. And so So Nick brought his car down to Oregon from Bellingham, Washington. It's about 6 to 7 hour drive out to this other individual, and so we connected with him and we just made another spec project because again I was still so new to filming cars that this was fun trip. As I told him, hey dude, as long as you are paying for my food and you have a place for me to sleep, I will do this for free.
Yeah.
So I created that. That also went really viral. And the guy Brock, who has the 996 with the rooftop tent, he liked working with me so much that because I was not an automotive filmmaker, and because I didn't just shoot cars, it wasn't about the cars, it was about the people. And that's what I always come back to is I'm not really passionate about one thing. I'm not passionate about cars. I'm not passionate about motorcycles. I'm not passionate about food. I'm not passionate about all these different genres that you could get into. I'm passionate about passionate people. And so this guy liked the fact that I was focusing a lot on the people aspect and really being able to have the people as the centerpiece rather than the vehicle as the centerpiece. And so through that, I was able to then work with him on a big project that was a short doc. It was basically... He brought me on and said, I want you to film this whole thing for this big client that I have. They're going to do a piece on me. I want you to direct it. And so I built a team. We did a week in Utah filming Monument Valley and all these great, incredible spaces, and did a whole week road trip film. And that also went viral. And so that was, again, propelled he and I to work more together, to working with Porsche directly. And so that was a great window opportunity for us to then film another project for him the following year for Porsche. But through all these other things, people saw me posting about these cars on social media and all the behind the scenes of how I filmed these things, and so I got to shoot an overlanding documentary series that took us through Death Valley in California and eastern Oregon, where it's a little more dry, like the Alvord Desert, and then West Oregon as well, where it's a little more green and lush. But through my connection with Brock, we got to work with Porsche. We then got to get flown out to, after having a couple successful projects with them, we then got flown out to Germany to go film. And, that was a huge thing for me because years prior, my wife and I, our huge connection point is travel. We love experiencing different cultures. She had lived in Scotland for 3 years growing up, and so
that's my bucket list.
Yeah,
I've
dude.
always wanted to go there.
Yeah, dude. Scotland is amazing. Yeah.
Man, that's cool.
She lived in Paisley, just outside of Glasgow, for 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she did her YWAM DTS there, and she was pulled onto staff there, and so she experienced all of that. So our love language and what we like to do together is travel and experience culture and find those places that locals go to and just soak in that community rather than being like, we want our thing in this space. It's like, no, we want to experience what we want to learn from you. And so that was a huge thing for me. After 2020, I thought I was not going to be able to travel anymore.
Yeah.
And so I was like, man, this is, I didn't take the vaccine. It wasn't about that life. But because of that, there were so many regulations that were saying you're not going to be able to travel anymore because of this and because of that. I'm like, so be it, kind of deal. I wasn't going to compromise on that. But through that, I was able to go, though, because they weren't, at the time, I think 2022, the regulations were still allowing for people as long as you did some extra testing. So I went to Germany, and it was really emotional for me because I'm like, this is my window back. This is my opportunity to go travel again and travel for all these productions. So we did a Porsche road trip from Stuttgart, Germany, from basically the Porsche Museum and the manufacturing plant all the way to Le Mans, which is the home of the famous 24 Hours at Le Mans. And that was incredible because we got to, again, I was in the director's chair, got to direct a lot of those visuals on the road trip there, and then we got to film part of the Le Mans Classic. This was not the 24 Hours of Le Mans, this was the Le Mans Classic, so instead of it being like the most recent, most updated modern hypercars, it was all the cars that had won races in the past or raced in Le Mans from the 60s and 50, I can't remember when the first Le Mans was, but 50s, 60s, all the way up to the present. And so that whole entire, I think Le Mans actually dates further back, but regardless, that, we got to experience French culture and the Le Mans race, which was crazy to see all these classic cars racing around that track. And we got to see classic Jags, classic Porsches, classic Mercedes, you name it, it was there. My favorite one, the GT40, because that was, one of the incredible muscle car. The true birth of like the American muscle car right there was the Ford GT40. But I saw several of those vehicles on the track, and it was unreal. So we fly back from that, and I'm like, okay, I'm in love. I want to do more travel and filming for cars and all these different stories of individuals and their connection with the automotive industry and that whole entire community, because it is a very big community. And so, yeah, at that, let's see, after that, what happened? I mean, I was traveling a lot, going to Austria, France, Germany again. I think those are the most recent places I went to that were noteworthy. Like I said, it just took me on the road and doing a lot of travel films, and that's what got me into the automotive space as a whole.
Yeah, and it was one of the, of course, a lot of your videos have been extremely interesting to see. One of them that kind of stood out to me was, again, going back to that video you did with Nick, and it was a city that was desolate, that was just kind of left, ghost town.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly what the name of it was, but
I don't think we named the actual abandoned town it was in.
so it didn't have like a name or anything.
It does have a name. I don't think I named it in the video though. I just remembered it was an abandoned town.
Abandoned town.
But
Gotcha.
yeah, so coming back to that thread, Nick and I had always like wanted to produce more because we liked working with each other. We knew each other's filming language. He's also a filmmaker He's working for Von Gittin Jr., who is a famous drift racer. And so he's their creative director. So he was always looking for opportunities for us to cross paths again. And so he built another car because his 944 went through a couple engines. It died twice.
Oh, no.
Since that first two projects that we did, which was the 944 in the woods, and then the Where To Next project with Brock with the 996.
Mm-hmm.
He built another car in the midst of waiting for this opportunity to build back his 944. So he built a Boxster, a 986, to be this kind of rally vehicle, and that was our second project, or like I guess the second project, and he and I working as like this moody kind of very, very cinematically driven movie, pulling from movies genre. So we call it the 944 cinematic universe. But he built that, and he said, I got a watch company that has given me wants to link this with the car build. So they helped him fund some of the building materials for it. We got a really cool watch with it to be able to film and kind of highlight, because within the automotive genre, there is a lot of connection with watches, gloves, glasses, a lot of those adjacent kind of products that are very much heavily associated with cars. And so this watch company wanted little promo pieces featuring this watch in this next car project. So they brought that out. They helped us produce it a little bit, and they gave us a little bit of finances, which I just poured back into production, kind of another semi-spec project. But at least, I wasn't pulling from my own budget this time. I was able to pull from, what they had given me. So we did that other one, and that one was quite a bit different than our first one, but still had some of those, the similar threads, some of the similar shots, that we could create this, continuation, where he was, with this one, we decided to take it a step further, where he's like emerging out of this water and on this snowy beach. It wasn't supposed to be snowing, but we had to delay our filming a couple days because he had gotten sick the couple days before filming, and it's like, hey, let's just push it to this day, and we'll, be better prepared. You'll be rested. You'll be ready, because it's gonna be a long 1-day shoot.
Yeah.
So we pushed it, but the night before it had just snowed, and it was really cold, and we're like, well, let's continue filming. Maybe it'll be a cool backdrop. And it was perfect. It just literally lit up the scene. If without that, it would have just been a retread of what we had done before. I mean, it would have been better because we, a little more advanced from our first go around. So this was like a full year and a half later after our first collaboration together. But it gave us this incredibly moody, very, very stunning backdrop of just this fresh powder on this ground. So he emerges from that water, he comes through, then he gets into the car, and it just really set the tone of these really dark, moody visuals that were reminiscent of some other movies. We pulled from, I think on that one, we pulled from the Batman, and we pulled from a little bit of Apocalypse Now, pulled from a lot of different kind of genres to make that second one with the watch. And then that one went really well. The watch company was extremely happy with that, and so they approached Nick again about, hey, we're going to do another rendition of this all-black watch. What do you think? And he's like, perfect, because on my rebuild of my 944, I want to do it all blacked out and do this really crazy idea with it. And so he approached me again and said, hey, do you want to produce this? Do you want to do it again? I was like, 100% yes, of course.
Like,
let's do it. Let's do it. And so, but we knew it's like, I told him, like, if we're going to do it, I really want to bring it to the nines.
Yeah.
I really, really want to, full send it. And so we got a few more sponsors to kind of help fund the project. Got a few production people that were willing to volunteer their time again. Again, we got sponsors mainly to take care of costs because at the end of the day, nobody really got paid for this. It was all fueled by our ambition, but at least we didn't lose money. That was the whole thing. It's like, I want to make sure everyone's fed. I want to make sure everyone's housed. I want to make sure everyone's happy. Mm-hmm. And so we end up pouring all that production money back into the production. And we came out with the film Nocturne. And that one was crazy. That was so much fun. It was like probably the culmination of all of the car stuff that I had learned over the past, few years. Mm-hmm. And also being able to pull back my cinema roots and be able to really do a lot of callbacks to a lot of great things that came before. Mad Max, The Batman, Death Proof, No Country for Old Men, and all of those. We straight pulled up inspiration from a lot of those movies and shots kind of identical.
If I'm correct on that video, was that the one that truly looked like Mad Max because you were out in the middle of the desert?
Yeah,
it was that one.
Yeah,
yes,
it was.
When you did say Mad Max in the video, I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. It looks just like Mad Max. And it wasn't just because of the sand and the desert and everything, but it was the coloring too, because he had like that red tint kind of vibe behind it, and in that the whole coloring scheme kind of gave you that feeling of like post-apocalyptic kind of like awesomeness, almost in a way. If like that. Yeah.
Well, we wanted this to be a cross of of Mad Max, and since we don't have like all the crazy stuff that Mad Max did and those really extremely vivid colors, we're like, let's shoot it similar to what we would shoot like Mad Max, but also rely on some of our character introductions like from Breaking Bad. I love those cold opens, and so that's where the town comes into play. Like, I wanted this car to kind of be hidden. I was looking for a junkyard at first, but we couldn't find one that was going to be accessible and within our schedules. So I think his girlfriend she found on social media an abandoned military town. So it was military housing for I think it was an Air Force base. And so after a while that became condemned because there was asbestos and all that, junk in there. And so it became pretty seedy. And so it was abandoned, and now it's just kind of this space that people can travel to. You technically should have a filming license if you're going to film in there. But it's one of those kind of loose spaces that, like, if you're just going over there to take pictures, you can go over there and take pictures. But if you're going to go film, you really do need a filming license. We were able to talk to the gentleman and work out a deal. Like, hey, after we started shooting, he came over. We drew attention essentially, and so he comes, says, technically you're trespassing and you need a license if you're going to do any filming. And we told him, like, listen, we've all come through. I've come from Tennessee. He's come from North Carolina. We've all traveled here to make this thing together. Can we just have like 20 minutes and then we'll be out? And he's like, yeah, just keep it down. And so he gave us
being cool about it.
Yeah, he was being cool. It's like, but next time, if you're gonna film in here, you really need a filming license. Yeah. And so we took our grace and we shot the rest of those little bits in there, and we got out of there. So it was, that abandoned town was really, really cool because it set such a different tone for the production as a whole, and it just it was it was better than the junkyard because it matched the story of this dead car that's now coming back to life. And so it's like this dead town, and it was broken glass everywhere, there was graffiti, there was just busted down walls, it was debilitated. And so it created such a great cold open to then the rest of the film. So
wow, that is amazing. So, and then going from there, let's talk about your team, man. this team of individuals who all together is just incredible to put together the things that you have put together. And that teamwork is so essential, man. It's so critical.
Yeah.
To have such a good team behind you, to
Mm-hmm.
be able to trust them, to know that they're going to um, do what you need them to do, but also have fun with it too, and have
Yeah.
that freedom of being able to do what they want to include too, but
Mm-hmm.
also have that togetherness. And so, but yeah, just kind of diving deep into your
Yeah.
team. How did you meet your team, and how did you?
So the crew for that project, the Vision Creative Co., they are based in Orange County. They had worked with Nick on a couple productions before. He and I, the guy who owns Vision Creative, Griffin, he and I had been texting back and forth a little bit before we got to do the production, and we were always just excited about the potential of working together. So after we had that production, after we did one production where I was an editor for one of their projects, they were extremely ecstatic about working together, and so they had worked with Nick because he was the director on that this truck project, this Fox Factory and Chevrolet truck project collaboration. So I edited this dynamic kind of Pennzoil inspired film that was going to be the launch of this new truck. And so we filmed all that. It was great. They filmed all that, and then they sent the footage to me, and I pieced it together to this cohesive storyline that ended in the heart of San Diego at a dealer, and it was really great. It was a lot of fun, and everyone was really excited about this possibility of working together again on something. And so Griffin, Nick, and I got into discussions about Nocturne, and we had said, hey, Nick's working on the build of this car. I'm working on a script that I would like to produce, and would you want to be involved in getting some of those crazy visuals with your crazy arm camera on your Bronco? And he said, of course, I would love to. He didn't have to really even convince him. And so knowing that these guys are high-end production, they do a lot of really big productions in the automotive space. I knew that I could rely on them to basically take care of all the really cinematic car movement shots.
Yeah.
And I haven't really played a lot of the car arm stuff. I've, have my smaller ragtag kind of crew stuff that is a lot more, it's just quite a bit smaller.
Yeah.
But I had worked in the commercial space before, working on large crews of, 10 to 15 people before, 20 people. And so I knew how, to operate in that space, based on my commercial experience. So, I've kind of gone through these seasons of fluctuation of like working with big crews, then working with just me, and then working with big crews and just me. And so, that's the nature of my business, is you kind of fluctuate and work with different creatives and work with different crews all the time. So I'm not really locked into like one crew. I had a few crew members that I would rely heavily upon for productions back in Washington, and they were my go-tos, and they're epic. And anytime I would get a project that had the ability to bring those individuals on, I would, because you develop a good rapport. You guys speak each other's language. They know they know how you're feeling, and you know how they're feeling about certain shots, and they're like, we can take care of it because I know exactly what you're going for. Yeah. So there's definitely this fluidity that goes on. So I had not worked directly with this new crew, the Vision Creative Co. We had only kind of worked via email via this project that was with the truck. So when we came onto set, they were extremely excited to be able to work together, because there was a lot of already established trust based on our previous productions that we made. And I basically came to the table. Griffin is very, very structured. He's a very I want a shot list. I want this. I'm like, I had shot list a little bit here, but I only shot list the story parts, and I have few shots within the car, heavy scenes. And so the rest of it is, I want there to be creative freedom. So I storyboarded the beginning part, the scene in the town. Yeah. I'm like, all right, I know this is going to be connective tissue, and these are the two shots I want for the connective tissue, then for us to open up and just have fun in the next section. Yeah. So this is where you guys get to shine in. I'm relying upon your knowledge of how these cars move and how you guys move with the car, with the camera car, to then be able to get some of these really crazy shots. And so it was this good back and forth of like, all right, now we got to do this middle section. Now I've got that storyboarded out, and this is what I need for that part. And then I have this end section that I've got that part storied out, and that's what I need for these parts. And so it was this kind of handing of the torch of like, all right, now you get to direct these things. All right, now I get to direct these scenes, or, you know, so on and so forth. It was just a lot of give and trust for each other in their own spaces to be able to create these really good beats within the film.
Yeah.
So you have these, you know, really, because the one thing with some of these projects is like, I don't like to storyboard everything. I like to storyboard maybe 75 to 80% of it. And then the rest of it is creative freedom, because you never know when you're on set if there is a creative moment that is even better than what you would have come up with.
Yeah, which would happen all the time.
Yeah, it happens. You know, and a lot of productions, they want the shot list locked. They don't want to deviate from it, because you're also working with larger productions and larger, you know, hundreds of people.
Yeah.
So you are then having to go through a ton of people that need to know everything's going to be dialed, because if like, well, we didn't prepare for that kind of shot, we can't do that. And you have to go through all these different not legalese, but more so like all these different departments, and with costume and lighting and scheduling and all these different things to be able to make sure that you have time to pull off these certain shots that you have now come to the table with. So I like to do about 80% of it, and then allow for creative inspiration in the moment to be able to fill in the blanks, and also rely upon your team to be able to then get to flex their muscles in their space of what they do best. And so, it was funny because, you know, Griffin is such a highly dialed individual as far as like he wants to know exactly what he's doing, and I love that about him. And so I think it was a little bit of a stretching period for him to like, hey, there's this chunk right here I have not storyboarded because I don't want to lock you in a box.
Yeah.
And so he was like, all right, let's just do some, let me rely upon what I know and how to do these really cool things. And so then he will, you know, let it fly and created some insane things that I wouldn't have even thought of. So then, so that's why I really love working in tandem and giving people an opportunity to flex their muscles, because it's not just my project, it's our project. It's not just about me, it's about what I want, it's about what we want as a collective. And so I'll bring some creative inspiration, but I want you to be able to then take some of those reins and be able to then really showcase your expertise in this.
Yeah.
And so it was a really great learning experience from each other's workflow to be able to respect each other's point of view, as well as trust the other individual to do what they do best.
So with all of the filmography that you've been doing for past few years and stuff, obviously you have some really good cameras and, you know, video stuff. What would you think would be like one of your best cameras that you've ever used?
Oh man, I think that the cameras today are incredible. I think that I love being able to work with new cameras, and I think that I'm coming to a space where they're all great.
Yeah.
If you know how to manipulate a camera, and if you know it well enough, you can make, you know, you can make an iPhone look fantastic. You make it look like it's shot on red. So as long as you know the cameras inside and out, then you can really kind of, you know, shoot on potato essentially.
Yeah.
And so, but everything today is so accessible that I've worked with a variety of cameras. My first camera for my business was a Canon 70, and that was when the Canon was really making a big splash in the DSLR movement towards using those for video instead of just for photo. They were developing some great sensors. They were developing, you know, the digital era of filmmaking, and so that was a huge takeoff in, I think, 2011, 2012. And so when they started developing things for video, I was heavily involved with Canon because they were the name of the game. And so I was playing a lot with that, and they have some incredible cameras that, you know, have lifted my career up to where it is now. Through that, Sony is also has really pushed hard into the video side, especially with the mirrorless cameras. And I saw one video way back when, maybe 2014, 2015, the A7S, the Sony A7S, which is basically kind of like a low light camera, to where you could crank that ISO up, and since it was a 12 megapixel camera, it was able to, have some pixel science. I'm not a huge like numbers and like specs guy. I'm like, I want a camera that does the job.
Yeah.
And so I was just fascinated with its capabilities in the low light scenarios, because at the time I was filming weddings, I'm like, I need, and all these lighting scenarios are changing by the minute, I feels like, so I need something that's going to be able to be powerful and when it's fully lit as well as low lit. And so I looked at the A7S, I was impressed, I bought it, and I just fell in love immediately with Sony's lineup, with that, and that trajectory. Their color was not as strong as Canon, though. So that was the one setback that I found with that, is that their color science wasn't up to snuff with Canon. And I still think that Canon takes the cake with a lot of the coloring. But you can manipulate the image enough to where you can actually get some of those rich Canon colors that you would see, that that I fell in love with. And so I fell in love with the Sony lineup with their cameras and their lineup, and I was just sold out for that side of things. And then when I wanted to step into bigger commercials with bigger crews, I was looking at the Reds, and because but that's like going from a $3,000 camera to like a $40,000 camera, when it's all built out, because you can't just buy the brain. It's the way that Red works is like you buy the brain, but you have to buy all the things that make it work that are around it, and those are $2,000 here, $4,000 here, another $1,000 here, and so it's like all that adds up to where I think I bought the brain was like $18,000, but all the add-ons then ended up being about ended up going to about $40,000, and so it's like, wow. I set myself up for success when I made that investment. And I fell in love with Reds because I was renting Reds when I was coming onto these bigger projects. When I was given the opportunity to direct certain projects, I would always hire a cinematographer that had a Red, because they, not just had a Red, knew what they were doing, because they may have a Red, but they don't know what they're doing, and makes it look like crap. Like I said, you can have any camera. It's not about the camera in your hand. It's about the person behind the camera that knows how to work it. Because I've seen people invest in Red because they like the idea of shooting on cinema cameras, but not really know how to work it well. And so they don't know how to manipulate lighting. Because I would say above anything, above your camera, is your lighting. You have to really focus on dialing in your lighting. You have to focus on dialing in your environment. You have to focus on dilating your lenses. Dialing in your lenses. And not dialing.
We want to make that lens really expand out. We want panoramic, man, 360.
Yeah, not quite that. But what I learned though is that it's all about your lighting. It's all about I would say probably my biggest thing is focus on your lighting and your lens choice rather than focusing on the cameras, because the cameras nowadays, any of them are great. You can buy a camera and you can shoot log, you can shoot not log, and log is basically like this flat gray profile that gives you the ability to then bring back the colors with in post-production. And I always shoot log because I like to be able to work with my colors rather than what their standard presets and stuff. So but as long as I'm able to manipulate the lighting and the lenses, I can shoot on anything essentially. And so it's all about preference at this point. But I loved Red's look. I loved what it did. Its color science was fantastic. The fact that I could shoot in RAW. And so I made that investment when I was moving on to bigger productions, and that actually got my foot in the door of a lot of other productions, because then it's like, oh, it's also kind of a sticker that you get to wear of like, hey, I shoot on Red. And you're like, I get to wear this Red sticker, and brands that don't really know about much about cameras, but they know Reds. It's like, oh, you shoot on Red. He must be professional. And it is true, because you're making an investment in those cameras to then present yourself to the world, into the industry, as like, I know what I'm doing. I've made the investments. I'm willing to take this risk. So are you willing to step in with me? And so I invested in the Red, and it got my foot in a lot of doors because they saw the work and also saw that I was shooting on red, and saw, okay, he knows what he's doing. Let's, bring him on to certain these projects. So red is definitely one of those cameras that I have been really in love with, because it's, it is cinema grade. There are a bunch of Hollywood movies that are shot on red.
Yeah.
But I think that my everyday go-to, I've upgraded my Sony A7S to the Sony A7S III now. And so that's been my favorite go-to camera for everyday stuff, because it's so accessible. It's so small. It gets you in small locations and is still able to create some really stunning visuals that I'm able to match with my red, that people can't really tell the difference. I remember I shot on the some of the first models of A7S, and people said, "Are you shooting on red?" It's like, no, it's just because I know my camera. I know how to work it. And so I was able to manipulate it enough to make it look like I was shooting on red.
Yeah.
So if you know what you're doing behind the camera, you can make any camera look good. But I say that right now, my everyday camera is a Sony A7S III, paired with a 24 to 70 millimeter lens 2.8. And that's because it gets you a little bit of telephoto, a little bit of wide, and everything in between. But if I'm working on larger productions, I always love going back to red and their color science, because it's really unbeatable, and the flexibility that you have to shoot in RAW makes it, the door is wide open for really dialing in your image coloring and, the properties of that.
Yeah. Well, dude, I wanted to thank you so much for joining in, man.
Yeah,
and
for
just telling
sure.
me all about everything that you've done. If it's okay with you,
Yeah.
man, I want to go ahead and plug in your Instagram, man, so
Yeah,
people
for
can
sure.
check you out. And,
Yeah, it's Pollock Pictures, Pollock Pictures. That's on Instagram, TikTok, and then Evan Pollock on YouTube.
Yes.
So
Yeah, and if you want to send me some of those websites and stuff like that,
yeah, I can
I
send
can
it to you.
definitely put that up in the corner here for you guys, so you can just click right through on into it, man.
Yeah, great.
But thank you so much, Evan, for
Yeah,
joining
dude,
me on the show.
Of course, yeah. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Share this video with one of your other friends who loves cinematography, man, just to enjoy it, just to sit back and relax to it. My name is Jack. I have my cup of joe. His name is Evan. He's got his cup of joe. Thank you guys so much for joining in, and I will see you guys later on. Peace out.